In this Game Week 21 preview, we are going to be looking at all of the hot topics, including whether to sell Trent, the best captaincy, is it time to go against Mo Salah, and of course, a chip strategy discussion alongside my transfer plans. So as always, if you're looking forward to today's video, make sure you drop a like, and of course, smash that subscribe button for daily fantasy content. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, we need to look at who is the best mid-price midfielder for your FPL teams. And the three that we're going to discuss right now is going to be Gordon at 7.5 million, Mbeumo at 7.8, and Bruno Fernandes at the most expensive at 8.3 million. Now, going into Game Week 21, these three are actually in the top 10 most bought players. So there really is a drive towards getting these type of players into FPL teams. Now, with the assumption of having Salah and Palmer in most sides, I don't think we can get all three of these into our midfield. I think you can get two. I'm one of those managers that has both Gordon and Bruno Fernandes. So there are team structures out there where you can have two of these. I don't think you can have all three. So it makes it even more important that whichever one you're bringing in needs to be the right one. So I want to take a look at both the underlying numbers for all of these three players and also the upcoming fixtures, because that is a really important aspect that we need to cover off. And also, it's worth noting with these three, the big thing that Gordon doesn't have that the other two do is penalties. Obviously, Alexander Isak being the penalty taker for Newcastle, that is a big factor that we also need to take into account when buying our players. If Isak goes off the field, then we do imagine Gordon will be the penalty taker. So look at the underlying numbers right now. This is based on per 90 minutes. From an XG perspective, Gordon leads the way at 0.44 compared to Bruno Fernandes at 0.37 and Mbeumo at 0.34. And that's quite surprising actually, because whenever I think about Mbeumo, I always think that he would be the goal scorer and putting up the really solid numbers. But right now he's actually third on this list. In terms of creativity, it is really similar. 0.27 for Bruno Fernandes, 0.26 for Mbeumo, Gordon 0.23. I think the first thing we need to conclude here is that what is brilliant about these three assets is that they're offering both goal scoring potential and creativity. It isn't a case of just these midfielders are being goal scorers and that is it. And that is the brilliant thing about these is when you look at the bonus point section, yes, Mbeumo is clearly leading the way at 1 bonus point per 90 minutes, Gordon at 0.47 and Bruno Fernandes at 0.69. Actually, their baseline bonus points are actually really good for all three, and that's because they are doing everything in their respective teams. In particular, Gordon recently, we've seen a slight uptick in those underlying numbers. So it's a bit of a cop-out here, but all three are fantastic for potential FPL returns. Obviously, Gordon not having the penalties. So when we look at numbers like this, and they're all fantastic, the problem with Mbeumo is the shot volume being a little bit low at 1.75 per 90 minutes. We really do need to take into account the fixtures. Now, it's quite clear right now that if we're just looking at buying for Game Week 21, Mbeumo shouldn't even be a consideration because they've got Man City at home. Now, Man City on paper sounds a terrible fixture, but City have also been really poor defensively. But then they do have Liverpool at home. Then Palace away doesn't feel a fantastic fixture, followed by Spurs at home, which by then we could have Van de Ven, Romero all return from injury. We could actually see a much improved Spurs team by then. Then they got West Ham away with a new management. That could be a slightly different West Ham team. And then Leicester away in Game Week 21. And straight away, when I look at these fixtures coming up, even with the narrative of Man City being really poor defensively, I just think those fixtures are bad enough to suggest buying Mbeumo is a very difficult buy right now. So I'm actually automatically, as we speak, putting Mbeumo third. It's really controversial because I've spoke about in the past how Mbeumo is just a set and forget in our FPL teams. But when we look at someone like Gordon, putting up those underlying numbers right now, yes, he's not on penalties, but the next four fixtures include Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, and Fulham at home. Then he comes into a trickier run of Man City away and Forest at home. I don't see how right now I could sit here and say to you, you've got to buy Mbeumo rather than that of Anthony Gordon. So I'm automatically here going to put Gordon above Mbeumo. And with a caveat that in Game Week 25, you could then actually pivot Gordon to Mbeumo if you wanted to when those fixtures start to change for both respective teams. So for me, Gordon is over Mbeumo. Now it comes down to Bruno. At 8.3 million, can we actually justify paying 0.8 million more than Anthony Gordon? We know the numbers are pretty good. In terms of the fixtures, game week 21 is absolutely the money fixture at home against Southampton. It does feel like whatever form United are in, they are capable of scoring goals in this game. Brighton at home equally, I think, is not bad. Then they got a tricky game against Fulham, Crystal Palace, Spurs, and then Everton away. So I think Bruno Fernandes for game week 21 and 22 could easily outscore Gordon because he's on penalties and he's a talisman on that side. But over the next 4 game weeks, I think at the price point of Anthony Gordon, he is the standout pick going into game week 21. So with that being said, I think I would rank these as Gordon number 1 and quite clearly number 1 based on everything that we've spoken about. I then probably would pay less, bring in Brian Mbeumo with the idea that he is just going to be a long-term pick and have Bruno Fernandes third. I think game week 21 is fantastic for him. And if you're looking for a bit of a short-term pick, he would be the guy. But if I'm looking at a pick that I want to keep long-term, I'd rather just have Mbeumo in my team than that of Bruno Fernandes. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. So the next big topic going into game week 21, and I've covered this in previous videos, but I think it's relevant once again, is it time to sell Trent in our teams? Now, the reason why this is relevant right now is because we had the FA Cup game on the weekend, Liverpool playing Accrington Stanley, and the big issue for managers right now is that Trent started in that game, obviously scored, which is a big bonus, but we knew he could do that anyway, and then came off after 60 minutes. So the big alarm bell right now for managers is because they're playing midweek against Nottingham Forest, which is a real big crunch game. Why is Trent starting that game and Connor Bradley on the bench? I think the natural assumptions there is, oh my God, now Connor Bradley is going to start midweek against Forest because they are using Trent in these smaller games in the FA Cup. However, we're going to put this quote up here from Slot before the game, asked why Trent is starting as opposed to Connor Bradley. And he did give us a very logical reason that Connor Bradley is coming back from an injury, didn't want to overload him in a fixture like this, so he is going to start Trent. And obviously we saw the situation where Trent came off after 60 minutes. Now, again, I think a lot of managers are panicking for no reason at all. And I think it comes back down to it. When Trent is 7.2 million, he naturally is going to be asked questions if he is worth the value. And I think I've stayed pretty consistent with this, that I don't think he's worth 7.2 million. However, is he the best defender in the game when he's on song? 100%. I do not think a defender comes close to him in terms of clean sheet probability and attacking potential. You can see that in the numbers here. 0.33 expected assists per 90 minutes is really solid numbers. Yes, he doesn't really offer much in terms of goal scoring threat, but we know that he has those bangers in him. We just saw that in that game against Accrington Stanley. So it comes down to it how you perceive Trent. For me, I think it's quite clear. I don't think he's an issue in our teams until we actually see that issue arise. So for example, if he is benched against Nottingham Forest, that is going to be a concern because it does mean that in a crunch game against Forest, Slot has the confidence to play someone like a Connor Bradley. Now, if that situation arises, then going into game week 22, we can reassess. But on the other hand, if he is benched in game week 21, I am almost certain that he will start in game week 22. I think the thing we need to quickly touch on is there is an expected double game week in game week 24 or game week 25. So it'll either be Bournemouth and Everton in game week 24 or Wolves and Everton in game week 25. Now, the big thing that I think is going to be relevant between now and that double game week is that regardless what happens between game week 21 and 23, I would not be surprised at all if we saw Trent start one and Bradley start the other. I could easily see in game week 25, maybe the Wolves game, Bradley starts, and the game against Everton, Trent starts. So I think we have to understand that. When we get to the double, regardless, Trent is going to be a doubt to start both of those. But between now and then, is he worth selling? And I think the answer is going to be absolutely not. If we see benchings in the next few, then yes, the conversation does change. And then I do think selling him to someone like a Canate is a viable option. But right now, I don't think managers should be panicking. I would keep him in your teams and reassess after game week 21 where we'll have a bit more information. If you are looking to sell, I prefer Canate over Van Dijk to save yourself 1.3 million. And I don't think the underlying numbers suggest that Virgil van Dijk is considerably better in terms of attacking returns, even though historically we know Virgil has a few goals in him each season. So keeping Trent is the move I think you should do. So next up, I want to deep dive into some other Game Week 21 hot topics that you guys have been asking me. And I think we can cover this all off in one decent section here. So first up, what to do with João Pedro. Now, the reason why we're asking this question first and foremost is because we know that João Pedro has got an ankle injury that potentially is going into the foot as well. He was ruled out for the FA Cup game this weekend, and that was a bit of a worry going into Game Week 21 because, of course, Brighton do play on the Thursday, and we've been waiting back for that MRI scan that he has been going off for. Now, we have had the tweet from João Pedro to say that the MRI results were good. Now, am I going to make any conclusions based on what a player is saying? Absolutely not. We have seen it recently with someone like a Wesley Fofana at Chelsea, where he's come out and said that I'll be good in 6 to 8 weeks. And Maresca is coming out and saying he is being hopeful that it's going to be more like 12 to 16. So even though João Pedro is saying that the results are good, does that mean he's going to play in Game Week 21? Absolutely not. Now, the big problem with João Pedro and Brighton assets in general, of course, the deadline is on Tuesday. Brighton play on Thursday. So I can't guarantee we're going to get any concrete news from either journalists or from Hertzler himself suggesting whether João Pedro will be available. I think it's quite clear right now. I think if you have a good squad, decent depth, and a good bench, of course, then I think you just start João Pedro, because I'll be very surprised if he's on the bench and comes on. Start him and really have a solid first bench replacement available too. So, for example, my team, I have someone like Semenyo. Not ideal away against Chelsea, but is it bad enough that I have to rip up my team to sell João Pedro? I think the answer is going to be no. Now, of course, other teams might be different. If you're in a position where your team is awful in terms of squad depth and you really do need that João Pedro spot to be starting in your team, then selling João Pedro probably is the safer option. And if you can upgrade to other forwards, then fantastic. If you need to downgrade to a Raul Jimenez, so be it. But I really do feel like in this situation, if you can just use your squad depth for this particular game week, it is going to be the right move. Next up, on the topic of forwards, who are the best three to own right now? If I was building a wildcard, what would those three look like? Well, I think it's quite clear that Alexander Isak is absolutely essential in our team. So I don't think we need to talk too much about that one. And I see a lot of people actually now starting to try and squeeze Erling Haaland in their teams. Now, I think Erling Haaland 100% is a phenomenal option, but have I seen enough right now to rip up our teams and pay 14.8 million for a forward in Haaland's sort of price point? Not yet. I have not seen enough right now to suggest that. So we're going to look at some cheaper alternatives. Now, Chris Wood, with the home game at Southampton in Game Week 22, honestly is the only reason why he's making this list. I think that is going to be an incredible fixture for Nottingham Forest. I think it is for any team. And I do think with Chris Wood, with his ownership, if I was looking to bring in forwards on a wild card or just for safe picks, he would be that number one option right now. I just think he's going to continue to tick over, even though the fixtures at times are a little bit middling. So the third forward is a little bit up for debate. You could go down to someone like a Raul Jimenez. Absolutely. I think he's fine, even though his minutes at times are ropey with Muniz waiting in the wings. Or, of course, you could go a little bit differential, like a Gabriel Jesus. You could go there. Or a Gakpo, who I absolutely think is viable. But right now, I think I would just go for Mateta. I think Palace is starting to turn a corner a little bit. I think we're seeing good things recently with connection to Sarr and Eze. And I think I would take a punt on Mateta with that entry point away against Leicester. But I would have Gakpo also on this list. In terms of ranking the budget midfielders right now, this has been the subject which has been in every single week. And we have had a number one spot change every single week. So I've currently got the 4 players here. There are some other considerations, but I think these are the 4 standouts. I'm not putting Ismaila Sarr. He's in kind of another bracket near the 6 million price point. Enzo for me is 4th. I think he's fine, but I just don't think he's better than the 3 that we're looking at here. 3rd is going to be Jacob Murphy. I would not be picking Jacob Murphy as a cover for Gordon, because whenever we see substitutions for Newcastle, Murphy is one of the first to leave the field, but his numbers are fantastic and he really is balancing that Newcastle team right now. So I don't think his starts are at risk at all. The only reason why he's 3rd, I think the January transfer window, he is at most risk of having minutes affected if they do buy someone in the transfer window. That is the only worry I would have. Number 2 is going to be Morgan Rogers. Now, in terms of just an actual pick, he would be number 1, but we also have to consider fixtures coming up. Villa have got 2 tricky away games coming up. Then they got some okay fixtures, but of course a potential blank in game week 29. So straight away, if you're not using him for 21 and 22, and then you have him in and out from game week 23 onwards, I don't think you're getting the full use of him. But in terms of just an out-and-out asset, he probably is the pick. Finally, number 1 is going to be Ahmad for me. Southampton at home is a phenomenal option for your team and a brilliant starting pick. After that, I have no idea what Man United are going to do. They could lose against Southampton and this suddenly becomes a bad option. But I think Ahmad is just getting those minutes under Amorim to suggest that at that price point, 5.3, he is incredible value for your teams. Next up, is it time to sell Jackson? I think if you don't have Isak, it's the most obvious move ever. Jackson to Isak, get it done. He is the best pick over the next 4 weeks in terms of a forward in Alexander Isak. Otherwise, I don't see enough forwards right now. Maybe Mateta, if you wanted to chase that, to suggest selling. He still has 2 home games against Bournemouth and Wolves. Yes, Chelsea are a little bit indifferent right now, but I still think Jackson is perfectly fine to keep for the next 2 game weeks. But I understand that patience is being lost of him. Finally, how would I rank the Crystal Palace players? Because yes, there is a potential blank in game week 29, but I don't think I should put you off the upcoming fixtures for them, which are pretty nice. Now, controversially, at number 4, I'm going to put Sarr, and it's just because I am a little bit of a sucker for Eze. I think the cream rises to the top with players, and I think in the second half of the season, we are going to see that with Eze. So naturally, if I'm going to put Eze above Sarr, Sarr is going to be 4th on this list, even though he is incredible value at 5.9 million. Number 3, I'm going to put Mateta. Could be higher up, but I think it's 7.4 million. When we could pick up someone like Eze at basically 1 million cheaper, I just feel like Eze is slightly above Mateta for me. And then number 1 is going to be Munoz. Yes, Crystal Palace might not keep all the clean sheets, but he basically at times is playing as a forward. We've seen that over the last 3 game weeks. And it feels only a matter of time until a huge double-digit return comes. So for that reason, Munoz is going to be number 1 on this list. If I've missed any hot topics, please do let me know in the comment section. Let's take a look at some captaincy. So who the hell do we captain in game week 21? This is a really interesting hot topic because in previous game weeks, I think whenever you've gone against Mo Salah, it probably has just been because you've got a bit bored, because every week it has been Mo Salah and it's been very, very boring. Game week 21 feels like the first actual game week where there is plenty of different arguments to go against Mo Salah. So here we've got the Rob T FPL graphic taken from Twitter. Make sure you guys do follow him over on Twitter, X, and Blue Sky if you were over there. And this looks at the projected goals and clean sheet odds. Now, I have highlighted 5 games here that are going to be captaincy games to consider for your teams. That's going to include Erling Haaland at Man City, Alexander Isak in this Newcastle Wolves game, Cole Palmer in Chelsea versus Bournemouth, Salah against Nottingham Forest away, and Bruno Fernandes at home against Southampton. I know Arsenal have brilliant numbers here, but I just can't sit here and tell you who to captain because I don't trust any of those attacking options. But I do think those 5 players that I've named are absolutely captaincy material because they tick all the boxes. Guaranteed game time, most of them on penalties, and talisman in their respective teams. So first up, we need to look at obviously Liverpool because Mo Salah has just been the go-to captain each and every week. And could I see Mo Salah still do the business against Nottingham Forest? 100%. I think Forest have been good defensively. I don't think they've been elite as other managers are suggesting. The games that I've watched them in, I would say Sells has put in some superhuman performances at times. I know that as Forest maybe do let teams have certain shots at times, similar to what Liverpool have done over the years, but I think there's definitely going to be opportunities for Liverpool in this game. I don't think Forest are as watertight as other managers are suggesting. However, do I think there are games where I can't see Liverpool, let's say, winning 3-0? I think maybe it could be like 2-0, 2-1, 1-0. Do I see games here where there could be a really big scoreline? And the answer is going to be yes. And that's the temptation this week, actually, to go against Mo Salah. I'm not doubting Mo Salah. I just think there could be options that are better than him. Now, I think if you own Erling Haaland, the same thing I'm going to tell you each and every week. If you own Haaland and he's 14.8 million, why are you not captaining him against a Brentford team that defensively are so damn poor? I always say it, and I know a lot of you watching probably don't have Haaland, but if you own him and the fixture's favourable, I think you just have to captain him to justify paying that amount of money. So Haaland's kind of in his own separate section here. He would be my number 1 pick as a captain, and he would be above all of these other players that I did name. So coming into the other options, first up, Alexander Isak with that home game against Wolves. Now, the actual game against Wolves is fantastic. I really do think that is a brilliant fixture. My only worry is that we've seen Eddie Howe's quotes suggesting that he is carrying a slight knock. They rested him in the FA Cup game to be prepared for game week 21, which is great. But also on the flip side, my concern is, if they're 2-0 up, 60 minutes gone, what a brilliant opportunity to take Alexander Isak off of the field. And that is the one thing that I do hesitate regarding Alexander Isak. I think all of the other options that I've said will start and play 90 minutes. I would not be surprised if Isak plays 65, 70. Is that enough to deliver 100%? Because he has incredible projected goals for the team and for him. But that is my concern about Alexander Isak. In terms of Cole Palmer, 2.2 projected goals for Chelsea. We know Cole Palmer is heavily influenced in all goals. I do think he is probably the most logical sideways move from Mo Salah because he's on penalties, game time's great, and I think Chelsea will score goals against Bournemouth. But I don't look at that game and think it has the potential of what the Newcastle or Man United game has. So I think Palmer is probably the safe option this week. I don't think he is the high double-digit haul player. So then it comes down to Bruno Fernandes. Now, I'm a manager that owns Bruno Fernandes right now, and I can safely say to you, at not one moment have I considered captaining him. And I think that suggests enough to me that he just isn't in the conversation. There's a few reasons being. First and foremost, Man United as a team are just the most unpredictable. Would you be surprised if they scraped to 1-0 against Southampton? Absolutely not. The second problem is, we've seen people like Garnacho come on and make an impact in games. Could we see Bruno Fernandes play 50 minutes in the front three and then regress into that centre mid position? 100%. We saw that in their most recent game in game week 20. And while Bruno Fernandes was getting all the plaudits as man of the match, he wasn't great for FPL, even though he picked up an assist, because he was doing such a great job in that centre mid role. And that's not where I want him. So that's my concern about Bruno. He could start up here and then actually go further back on the field while they bring on other attackers in those positions. So for that reason, I just can't get behind Bruno Fernandes. So it comes down to me, if you're going to go against Mo Salah, Palmer versus Alexander Isak. I think just because of the form that Newcastle are in right now, and Wolves being still a little bit indifferent in their manager, I think I would take the punt on Alexander Isak and hope that you get 70 minutes from him and you do get a game where they just blow Wolves out of the water at home. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I'm basically 55% Alexander Isak, 45% Cole Palmer as an alternative to Mo Salah. And yes, I do think it is a week that we can go against Mo Salah. So one other thing that I really wanted to cover in this Game Week 21 preview was going to be the upcoming blank and double game weeks alongside my current chip strategy. Now I get it, some managers might be thinking, God, Nacho, that's ages away. It ain't. And I really do think like Game Week 21 is the time to start thinking about what you want to do with your plans, because what we got here is the FPL team planner in association with Planet FPL. Make sure you do, guys, check this out. It is a fantastic site. And what James from Planet FPL has done is basically put his projections up for what could happen with the fixtures. Now, he is the first to say this on his podcast, that these are projections. Do not take these as gospel. He is only making his own assumptions going forward. But anyone who knows James from Planet FPL, the guy is a guru when it comes to stuff like this. So if it's wrong, it isn't going to be too far wrong. It's the way that I look at it. So what we want to look at right now, I just want to give you guys an idea of what the horizon looks like for fixtures. So Game Week 24 or Game Week 25 is going to be a potential double game week for Liverpool and Everton. Now, we currently got it projected in Game Week 24, but it honestly could be in 24 or Game Week 25. So we need to have that in the back of our minds. Again, if you're looking to sell Trent, you are selling a player that is going to have an upcoming double game week. Everton, of course, with a new manager in David Moyes, maybe there is going to be an option to go there, especially with Leicester at home as part of that potential double. But I need to see a little bit more from Everton to suggest going there. However, you can see in the top right corner, chip strategy. I think if you have your triple captain still available, like myself, that is the best week to do so. Play it on Mo Salah in a double game week 24-25. I think that is an absolute no-brainer. Next up we need to look at is going to be blank game week 29. Now this is going to be caused as a blank depending on who reaches the EFL Cup final. So right now we've got it projected, even though Spurs won the first leg, for Liverpool to progress to the final against Newcastle. That means that Aston Villa, Palace, Liverpool and Newcastle were blank because Newcastle were going to play Palace, Liverpool were going to play Aston Villa. Of course, if Spurs actually do progress to the final, then Liverpool Villa will be on, and Spurs versus Fulham will be a blank. So, of course, we need to monitor the second leg. Regardless, game week 29 will be a blank for 4 teams. I don't think you need to use a chip then. I do think you could just navigate that game week with free transfers if you want to. However, I do think you can use the free hit in that week if you choose to. So that is the next blank that you do need to consider for your teams. Now, coming forward, and again, we are going quite off in the distance, so please do take this all with a pinch of salt. I think game week 30-31 is an opportunity to use a wildcard. Start to come off the back of that game week 29 if you are using your free transfers in preparation for the bench boost in game week 33. Now, this is where it is expected for those rearranged games in game week 29 to be put. And I think it is good enough fixtures with both singles and doubles to go for your bench boost off the back of a wildcard. Then in game week 34, it looks like it is going to be another blank game week due to FA Cup commitments. That will be the semi-final of the FA Cup. Again, I cannot sit here and tell you who is going to reach the semi-final of the FA Cup. But with the projections here, and please do take these again with a pinch of salt, regardless, it is going to be quite a big blank game week. Hence why I think using the free hit in that week might be more beneficial than that of game week 29. And finally, of course, those fixtures need to move somewhere. And right now it looks like it could be in game week 36. And you can see those projected to game week 36. Again, we have no idea who is actually going to blank in game week 34. The big sort of thing that we need to take away from this is I think the assistant manager chip in game week 36 to 38 is the best time to do so. The reason being is we're going to have so much information in those final 3 game weeks. We're going to understand which teams are absolutely fighting for their lives in the bottom half of the table. And of course, with the chip, and it is the most powerful chip 100%, if you can find a team that is at the bottom of there, let's say Ipswich, they're going to have Brentford, Leicester and West Ham. If Ipswich are 17th, and let's say Brentford and West Ham are in the top half somehow, you get those 10 points additional if Ipswich were able to beat those teams in the top 10 because they would be 5 places or more above them. Also, we'll know the teams that are on the beach, so much, a title race. And I think the assistant manager also included in a double in game week 36 just makes complete sense to use that chip in that game week. So that is my current chip strategy, but of course, lots can change between now and then. But I do think it's really important to note this because I think rolling transfers from game week 21 onwards is a really powerful position to be in because, of course, we can roll up to 5 times in our teams, and also you can roll transfers through wildcards. So if you have 4 free transfers and then wildcard, you'll come back to 4 free transfers the following game week. And that is absolutely one of the most powerful things you can do this season. So that's why I think it is worth considering your chip strategy from now onwards. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's Game Week 21 preview video. I was going to touch on my team, but I will be releasing my team selection video tomorrow, so it makes complete sense for me to just a deep dive in that video. But of course, if I missed any hot topics, please do let me know in the comment section. I'll be sure to get to those and answer every single one. And of course, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure to drop a like and smash that subscribe button for daily fantasy content. FPL is officially back and it's going to be busier than ever, so make sure you do check that out. Have an amazing day. Any questions, do drop them in the comments and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.